You're listening to Alaska Real Estate. I'm Chris Story. On today's program, Jason Suslavich, legislative aide to Congressman Don Young. He's here with an update on the Mortgage Interest Deduction and the Super Committee. Plus, we'll check in with PeggyAnn McConaughey down in Juneau on ghosts and goblins. To disclose or not disclose? That is the question. If it happens to real estate, it matters to you. Alaska Real Estate made possible by Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, your Alaskan-owned finance company with a mission to make housing safe, affordable, and accessible for every Alaskan. Online at ahfc.us or call 1-800-478-AHFC. For more information on energy efficiency, visit akrebate.com. Let's check in with Congressman Don Young's office.
This is Jason Suslavich. I'm his senior legislative assistant, and I handle his housing issues. Flying out to Dillingham today for the day and spending the day with the chairman of the FCC and looking at some new broadband towers that are going up. And it's never a dull moment working for Congressman Young, that's for sure.
Are we facing real danger of losing the mortgage interest deduction?
In my opinion, given the lobby of the realtors across the United States, and given the strength of that lobby, I put it in the top three on the Hill. I really don't think there's much chance for the Super Committee to really take a serious look without some serious pushback from a lot of members of Congress and a lot of Americans. In my opinion, while it's on the table, while they can look at anything. I mean, they can go after anything but pretty much military pay and Social Security. While it's technically on the table, I don't think there's much movement around it, and I think there was such a pushback the first time it was talked about with the debt commission, with Obama's debt commission, that I really don't see it getting any serious weight.
In the Super Committee in the Congress, describe that.
That's a fun one. I spent the last 6 months kind of going through this whole debt ceiling, and I know there was a lot of frustration on behalf of, folks up here in Alaska, Congress just getting something done. And ultimately, I do feel like they came up with a really good product. The reason I say that is because there are multiple triggers that ultimately prevent a situation like we just had from happening again. And there's inherent incentives in the final of those triggers to force this super committee to come to some type of resolution to find $1.6 or $1.5 trillion in cuts.
Aside from our lobby, is there something individually you'd recommend that realtors do relative to either educating the public or taking action?
I think the realtors have done a great job already of taking action and keeping up that contact with their DC staff in Alaska. I think the delegation, at least on the House side, is very we signed on to a piece of legislation opposing any change to MID. I'm not sure what the senators have done, but at least on our side of things, the congressman would be one of the people that would step out against that. Were they to maybe think about it or to try to put it in there. The way I see it is, while there may be a lot of money that's claimed from it, the Congress isn't about to give another shot to the housing market right now, especially in its fragile state, and it just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Anything else that you think we as an organization or the citizens of Alaska need to know at this moment in time?
Even though it may look from the outside that things are moving at a snail pace and nothing seems to be getting done, my faith in Congressman Young and the Congress as a whole rests in the fact that the American people across the country and put the congressman there. I think all the realtors should know that, and most of them already do, that Congressman Young answers to Alaskans and Alaskans only. Our charge when we're there is always Alaska first and Alaska always. And so as we look at every piece of legislation, as we look at every proposal, all of the staff underneath him is charged with making sure that this is a good deal for Alaska. You have one out of 435 in the House of Representatives, and he's a good one.
You were with Congressman Young with Congressman Pelosi as the Speaker of the House. Now that Congressman Boehner is, has there been a big shift as far as you can see relative to the direction of Congress and sort of the inner workings?
There is. One of the strengths of Congressman Young is his ability to work in any situation. We have good friends on both sides of the aisle, so when we were in the minority with Speaker Pelosi, we were able to get a lot done, unlike most Republicans at that point. And now that we're in the majority, we have that much more freedom to get stuff done. I think that with Speaker Boehner, obviously Congressman Young, sees more eye to eye with him. They have a really good friendship and a really good working relationship that's been built over, many, many years. As far as the direction of Congress, I think what the realtors can see and what the American people can see is that you have two chambers, the House and the Senate, that are pretty much on different pages in terms of directions in which they want to take the country. And that's the main reason why you're seeing the difficulty moving through the budget process and through the debt ceiling and through appropriations. The House wants to take the country one way, and the Senate wants to take it another way. And I think what the American people want, and what Congressman Young actively tries to do, is bring folks together and try to find some middle ground and some common ground in those decisions.
Thank you, Jason. And also a big thanks to Alaska Association of Realtors for keeping the membership so well informed.
This is Colleen Harrington-Bear with Alaska USA Mortgage, talking today about jumbo loans. I can be reached at c.harrington@alaskausamortgage.com or call me 907-261-3416. Jumbo loans, what are they? Why are they scary? How to make it work? Any loan that's over $625,500 in the state of Alaska is considered a jumbo loan. That means the investor is going to require a few more things from you. They're going to want more of a down payment. They're going to want to know that you have more assets to show that you can make the payments. It's very easy. It's a simple process. Give us a call. We can fill out an application, get you an answer back, and we can move forward. Thanks, and have a great day.
We now go to Juneau. Please welcome PeggyAnn McConaughey. I want to talk about ghosts and goblins and paranormal disclosure, because it's one of those issues that from time to time, I think anywhere in the country you're going to deal with, and Alaska is no exception. So that's what I want to ask you. I want to ask you if it's a required disclosure, if there's been paranormal activity or ghosts or hauntings, and if not, what's your opinion on what realtors should do with properties that are proclaimed as haunted?
Whoa.
I know. Well, scary.
Yeah, scary stuff. Especially since I actually had a property that I think was haunted. So.
That you owned or listed?
No, I listed it. It was a foreclosed property, and I was convinced, not necessarily that I found it. I had my contractors who were in there, and they were working on the property, and they had an encounter, shall we say, and were so unnerved by it, they called me up and said they weren't going to go back into the house.
Really?
And I said, "You've got to be kidding me. This is a joke, right?" And they said, "Absolutely not." And so I met them at the house, and no, they brought me in. They had finished the repainting, the carpeting, all the kind of cosmetic stuff, and it was an old house downtown. It had a basement, which rarely do downtown houses have basements, and somebody was upstairs in the upper part just finishing up some stuff, and all of a sudden he heard this wham, 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 and all of these doors were shutting in the house. So he told the other guy, "Hey, cut that out. I don't need that kind of stuff." And the other guy said, "I didn't do a damn thing. Who was that?" And so they ran down, took a look, and every single door that they had open, because, they had some fresh paint, that they had on it, was all closed. So they thought this was pretty unusual. So they went and, opened them up, thought that they had placed stuff around them so they could shut, went back upstairs to do what they were doing. All of a sudden, wham, 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 wham. Nothing happened when I was in there, but it was pretty damn eerie with these two burly contractor guys who were scared to get to go back in there themselves. We thought we had a haunted house, and I made a decision that, you always err on the side of disclose it. So anybody that looked at, I had in all the MLS stuff, I had everybody who said this house is purportedly haunted. Whether you believe it or not, that's what we think. If you don't care, that's fine. But we think that there's a problem. And we got it sold, and the people who bought it thought it was a lark. They saw the disclosures, they accepted the disclosures, and when they bought the house, they had the house blessed by a gentleman who was our local Catholic bishop. And he performed the ceremony, and they bought it and lived happily, ever since in the house. But it was something that was just unusual, and no one knew quite how to do it. So we always err on the side, if you know it, disclose it. Regardless of how strange people may think you are, the fact that you made the disclosure is better than if you didn't make it the disclosure and somebody hears from a neighbor, "Hey, I hear you bought the house that's haunted." That story was the same one that I told at that point Dave Feakin. Dave Feakin and I served on the legislative committee for the state, and we were looking at how to structure a bill that would go to the legislature to deal with psychologically impacted properties. Because at that point, horror stories, I should say, and I don't mean horror in the supernatural sense, but horror stories of people selling properties, licensees selling properties in the state of California and being sued because people said, "You sold me a ghost house," and having the whole thing overturned in court. So because of that, because of, what do you do if somebody died in a property of a natural causes? What do you do? How do we do this? Well, we structured what we thought at the time was a fairly good psychologically impacted statute that we were looking for someone to bring to the legislature and get introduced. At that time, though, when the person that we brought it to was taking a look at it and having his aide look at it, Alaska does not have a statute that even defines psychologically impacted properties. And without a definition of what is a psychologically impacted properties, we couldn't put in a bill just to deal with psychologically impacted properties. It had to have either, first, the definition of what is a psychologically impacted property, and then second, we'd have to put in the statute. That was seen to be an almost insurmountable job to try to get through the legislature. We came to a compromise, and the compromise is in statute. If you know a property where there's been a murder or suicide committed, and you show it within 1 year of that murder or suicide, you must disclose that it has happened.
Well, I guess that means Ghoul disclosure. Wasn't that funny? I mean, I'm serious. It wasn't funny.
Hi, my name is Julie Settle. I'm with Alaska USA Title Agency. For all of your title and escrow needs, Alaska USA Title Agency has 5 convenient locations statewide: Anchorage, Wasilla, Fairbanks, Juneau, and Kenai. Log on to our website at www.alaskausatitle.com to open title and escrow on your next sale or refinance, or contact our office at 877-646-6498.
I hope to see all of you in Homer September 13th for Convention 2011, Social Solutions. Go to AlaskaRealtors.com for your reservation. Well, that's it for this edition of Alaska Real Estate. Sandy Ehrenman produced our program. I'm Chris Story.